Hey guys, this is Rockman Rocks from BackStage360. We're super excited tonight to have the iconic, multi-Grammy Award winning singer-songwriter Michael McDonald. Super excited about that. I want to give a shout out to Jackie Bertoni from Jackie's Groove for setting this up. Stay tuned. He's got an interview with Mike coming out, I think, tomorrow. Without further ado, let me introduce Michael McDonald.
Hello, everyone.
From St. Louis, how did you ever arrive with Steely Dan?
Well, it was a little longer journey than that, but I came out from St. Louis in 1970, and to work for a producer, Rick Gerard, who was at the time had just finished a few albums that I was very much an admirer of. One was Nilsson's Aerial Ballet, Surrealistic Pillow, and Jose Feliciano's record. And he was a great producer, made some great records. And I came out as an artist in his stable. He brought me out as a young artist, songwriter. But for the longest time, even though I recorded some tracks with him for potential records that were at some released, some not released, but mostly the great experience I got out of it was working with him in the studio and working on sessions and being thrown in with some guys that I would have never gotten to work with in any other way, and so in an effort to kind of keep me solvent and fed, he used me on his sessions, and whatever I could do, whether it was piano or sing backgrounds and stuff, and that was kind of what introduced me to the recording scene in Los Angeles, and it was a great break for me in hindsight. It really opened the door to that whole episode of my life where I eventually got to work with Steely Dan and on the road. But more directly, the line for me to Steely Dan was through Jeff Porcaro, who I had worked some gigs with, and we'd played some clubs together in the Valley, in the San Fernando Valley, and as Jeff came up, and became kind of an A-list drummer here in LA at a very young age, he was playing on the Steely Dan records, and he hired me, or he threw my name in the hat for auditions with Steely Dan, and I miraculously got the job, and we toured with he and I toured with Steely Dan for the better part of the next year all around the world.
That had to be super exciting. I mean, obviously they were a great band musically too, especially.
Yeah, it was exciting for a couple of reasons. They were a great band, of course, and but they were like my favorite band at the time. I was the first band I really had become such a huge fan of. Maybe since the Beatles. I mean, I was just so I so much loved what they did and the music they were making, and it was such a breath of fresh air at that point in time.
Sure.
So to get a job with them and actually go on the road was a dream, more than a dream come true. Really,
right.
Yeah.
And after that, did you jump in with the boys from Doobie Brothers, or were you doing something else prior to that?
Well, there was a little bit of a hiatus between the last tour with Steely Dan that we did and before I started recording with them again, and so I was back working nightclubs in Los Angeles pretty much again, and when the next record, Katie Lied, came up, which was about a year later, I got the call to come in and sing some backgrounds, which I was thrilled to do.
Sure.
And that started a long relationship with the guys for me over the course of the next 3 or 4 or 5 albums of singing backgrounds on certain cuts on their records. But they never toured again in that whole time period. So Jeff Baxter, who was in Steely Dan also, wound up playing with the Doobies pretty frequently, pretty consistently, and became more or less a member of the Doobie Brothers. So,
absolutely.
And Jeff pulled me in to the Doobies camp, and that started out as just a temporary gig for one tour, and that it kind of materialized, unbeknownst to any of us, into a long relationship with those guys.
Yeah, and I mean, let's be realistic. You guys wrote and performed some of the greatest hits of that era.
Well,
I
thank
think.
you. It's nice of you to say. Yeah, we made a lot of, for me, what was a lot of fun music together, and we toured over those next few years extensively all around the world, and became real fast friends, real good friends. We're still friends to this day, and it's a long-standing friendship with those guys that I have, and still very much appreciate today.
So, Mike, who were your early influences before Steely Dan and coming up in your high school days?
Sure. Well, growing up in St. Louis, of course, like I said, I started out my first band. I think I was 12 years old. We played in our drummer's basement, and his poor mother was a saint, listening to us play the same 3 songs for hours. But we started out playing around Ferguson, Missouri, was where I grew up. And in fact, our very first paid gig, they actually paid us to stop. We played one set, and they'd had enough. It was a church group. So that's how our career started. But our influences back then were pretty much the artists that were on the radio, Beatles, Kinks, and we all came up in that kind of British invasion era. Mm-hmm. But then I discovered rhythm and blues music, and I remember one of my first. Always loved Ray Charles, and he was probably one of my biggest influences. But there was a record by Edwin Starr back then called "Stopper on Sight," and that record really turned my head. Being in the throes of a 4-piece kind of a guitar band, playing Beatles songs and the Rolling Stones and stuff like that. All of a sudden, I heard this really very sophisticated production and great feeling rhythm section, and just a whole other league of American music that really, like I say, I had it resonated with me, and I think from that day on, I became a huge fan of R&B music, and I kind of took that path from that point on, and so the subsequent bands I was in the St. Louis area were pretty much R&B dance bands that played around in the nightclubs like Club Imperial, the Castaway Club, and places that are kind of became iconic over the years. When we played the Castaway Club, we were the house band there, and we backed up everybody from Chuck Berry, to Fontella Bass, artists like that, and St. Louis Girl, and Ike and Tina played there, and we shared the stage with the Allman Brothers, who at that time were called the Hourglass, and they had a residence in St. Louis for that time period. Played a lot of the clubs that we played, and then Club Imperial, of course, was where Ike and Tina kind of were discovered, and they were pretty much a real staple there. Bob Cuban and the In-Men was another band that played all those same venues. So, I was introduced to some great music. I didn't realize what a great town St. Louis really was for music till I moved away. And looking back, I realized that there were so many great musicians who came from St. Louis that I hadn't really been aware of until, like I say, till I moved out of California.
So, this tour now, I mean, you've been going 40 years, over 40 years.
Yeah.
You going to continue to do this?
As long as it seems like a good idea, I mean, I love playing, and we love to work, and I'm always looking at ways to kind of work more. Although I got to be realistic. At my age now, much longer will I do it? I don't know. There's a lot of guys out there who serve as a great inspiration to me. Who are still going strong, and the reality is, I don't think I ever dreamed in my wildest dreams that 40 years later I'd still be getting on stage with Donald and Walter from time to time, and working on Jeff Baxter's new record. I mean, and working with the Doobie Brothers all these years later. it's amazing even to me that we all still are doing it. You know, we're maybe the first generation of rock and roll musicians who have worked this far into our senior status. You know, being on the road is what really keeps us in touch with people more than even social media.
Of course.
I find that getting up and playing for people is nothing will ever replace that, I don't think. And so it's really, the impetus is on us to find ways to get out there and play. And that gets more difficult with, you know, the cost of things, and, you know, everything's
Right.
more expensive, travel, you know, hotels and stuff like that. But we find a way to do it. No, it's the venues have, you know, materialized as we've gotten older that still allow us to play. You know, because I think a lot of us would be out of business, or we wouldn't find the opportunities to play if these, like, let's face it, oldies radio is a blessing, and, you know, for guys of my age, you know.
Absolutely. I mean, let's talk a little bit about the shape of the music business today. Like you were talking earlier about how hard it is for a young musician coming up today with the landscape being the way it is.
Well, you know, they're pretty creative, the younger bands, and they seem to be doing it for themselves in ways that we never imagined. And didn't have there was no internet back then when we were. So the structure was the label structure, and trying to get a shot at getting on a label, which was you know, a small target, you know. But we were fortunate, those of us who were able to get in with on a major label and actually make records that people might potentially hear, you know. Nowadays there's more opportunities to be heard, but there's more competition that comes along with that, you know.
Right.
For any one single young band today, there's 10,000 bands out there making a record professionally enough to you know, to garner a certain share of the audience that's out there, you know.
Right. Your son's been touring with you on and off?
Yeah, his band, the Avians, they've got they're on their third record, and they make great records, and they're a young band, and they get out and play as much as they can. But as you know, most young bands, you know, today it's like you hardly get paid for playing, you know, and so they just get out there and try to break even, you know, just so they can get up in front of an audience and play. And,
sure.
But they're doing a great job and recording some great stuff. And when they open for us, they do a great job, you know.
Right.
But, you know, it's not, my audience is probably not really their core audience, you know, but
right.
Nonetheless, they're pretty discerning, you know, music fans, and these guys get up there and do a great job. You know.
Right. Any new music coming down the road?
Yeah, well, right now I'm working harder than ever. My wife's album has been released, and I should only work so hard on my own records, but she's got me hopping, you know. And it's a great record, a record called Light on My Path. And she's made some beautiful records over the last few years. And the last couple of records are probably her best. This one is a beautiful record. It's getting a lot of accolades from the press. And even the guys who worked on the record have made a point to call me and tell me how much they liked the record now that they got their own copy of the whole thing, you know.
Right.
Because up to then they only knew the track they worked on, you know. And so they were really pleased to hear the whole thing and made a point to call me. And
yeah, the song that Jackie played for me yesterday at his studio was all about, you know, a couple growing older together.
Oh, yeah.
And
We're All Strangers Here.
Yeah.
The name of that song, yeah.
It took my breath away.
Oh.
I got to be honest with you.
Wow.
Her voice was just...
Yeah, she's always been a great singer, Amy, and she's done a couple of more on the jazz side ballads on this record, and it made me realize that she has a natural bent for singing jazz, you know, and she reminds me a lot of some of the older singers in her phrasing and her maturity with a piece of music like that, which was kind of a pleasant surprise for me. I love the songs, and I wanted to see her try them, but I was really pleasantly surprised at how well she did them. You know.
Now, did you write all of the material for her album?
No. Some of these songs were songs that she wanted to record for about 23 years. and she kept getting pregnant every time she started this record. So she did a record in between then and now of original stuff that's a beautiful record, but she really wanted to get around to getting in the studio with Fred Mullen, the producer, and recording these particular songs. Some of these songs are songs that she started singing or started recording even as long ago as 23 years ago. And some of them were just put on hold. So she finally got to finish this record after all these years. And it's a real love project for her to get this finished.
Is this going to be distributed by a major label, or is she doing it herself? Or?
Well, so far it's on our label, Chonin Records, but we're hoping to partner up with a label that will allow us to distribute it worldwide, and get it out there so people can hear it. I think people will like it when they hear it for sure.
Hopefully you'll have vinyl copies.
Well, we're going to do some vinyl. And we're hoping to hook up with a major label, largely for distribution and to actually do some physical product like vinyl. How many we'll do, I don't know, but when you're real small like we are, it's real expensive to print vinyl. So with a small order, so we're hoping to kind of maybe piggyback on some other labels' larger orders and therefore get a chance to print some quality vinyl at a better price.
Right. So, look, if you had anything to say to your fans, go ahead.
Well, I just want to say thank you for coming to see us day in and day out over the years, and we're going to be out most of the summer, and we'd love to see any of you that can make it down to our shows. Look for Amy's album, if you will, Light on My Path. I should have a record coming out sometime this year. I've been trying to put this record out for a few years now, but I've finally made a pact I'm going to kill myself if I don't get it out this year. So hopefully I will. But in the meantime, my son's got a record coming out, Dylan McDonald and the Avians, and Amy's record. And we're going to be touring, like I say, all up and down the East Coast, up and down the West Coast all summer. So if you get a chance and you hear about us coming to your town, we'd love to see you.
Maybe all three of you in one concert?
I don't know about that, but eventually we do that from time to time. By the way, we go out and play special events where my son and my wife will come up and play, and we'll put together kind of an impromptu band, and so we may do a few of those. Those are usually like charity events, stuff like that.
And speaking of the band, are these the guys you're playing with now, they all been with you forever, or like most of you guys, or you got new people all the time?
Well, this is the latest band I've had over a few years, but most of the guys have been with me for a long time. Myself and Bernie have been together for well over 25 years. Most of the other guys are newer. Pat Coyle and I have been together for a lot of years.
No, Pat's been around forever.
Long time, and are all great musicians. I'm very fortunate to have them out here. Yeah. They've all got better things to do, but they come out time after time, and I appreciate them a lot.
Right. All right, guys, you've heard it here from Rockman Rocks at BackStage360. I want to again thank Michael McDonald.
Tony, thank you, buddy. Appreciate it.
Thank you. It's our pleasure.
All right.
And if there's anything we could ever do for you, please let us know.
Well, thank you, man.
Anyway, this is Rockman Rocks signing off.